Episode 4 of Euphoria Season 3 has just been released, and you know what? This season just keeps getting better and better. Just when I questioned whether Levinson had it in him after The Idol, this season has been different, but it's been full of action, drama, and pure WTF moments that have been keeping me entertained. With this episode, it felt like it was all about the lengths that people are prepared to go to in order to make it big, the dark side of the world, the lies that you're willing to make, and the stark similarity between both Kitty and Cassie as they set off on selling themselves in different ways but being exposed to similar behaviour. So with that, let's break down the ending, discuss the episode, and I'll share what I thought of it. Here is Euphoria Season 3 Episode 4 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Cassie and Maddie. Cassie had finally had enough of being with Nate following what happened with Naz during their wedding. After hearing how much money he owed, she quite literally just packed her bags, left, pawned her wedding ring, and started renting an apartment with it so she could make it big by selling images of herself online again. There were many moments throughout this episode where it seemed like she was gonna get taken advantage of, whether it be by Maddie or by Brandon, but what it showed most was the lengths that some people are prepared to go to in order to get the attention or following that they desire. She was putting herself in a situation that she wasn't necessarily comfortable with, taking substances, pretending to know people, and fabricating this whole fake personality in order to get a photo with Brandon. Ultimately amalgamating in him just being on top of her and trying to be intimate. This scene wasn't only paired with Jules sat at her canvas with a brush after being commissioned by the network that Lexi worked for, implying that Cassie was Maddie's canvas and equivalent to a piece of art, but it was also contrasted with Kitty too, the new girl that was working for Alamo. Kitty found herself in this dark world and was being taken advantage of by the men that went to the club. She hated it, didn't want to be there or be doing that, and also wanted to block out her memory and her reality by taking substances, but there she was, trapped. I feel like that was done to show that both Kitty and Cassie's worlds are adjacent to each other, and even though Cassie's one feels safer so to speak, she's still exposed to risks and dangers. Just like what we saw before Maddie and the camera crew came bursting through the door. Cassie did actually end up getting the photo that she was after with Brandon, and her socials were blowing up. I did find it quite symbolic that she sold her ring from the person that she was supposedly supposed to love most in the world, and as all of the notifications were coming through to her phone, they were appearing over the photo of both Nate and Cassie together, ultimately blocking the photo. So it highlighted how she's now picked her side and her life was going to be taken over by this new dark world that she'd entered. There were a couple of shots of Cassie where it really did feel like she was just selling her soul. For example, when the leaf blower wasn't working, she didn't care and she just said how people are only interested in her body, not her hair. And there was also this dark scene where there were two young girls sitting on the curb watching Cassie get into the car with Maddie for the first time, where she was about to enter this new world. A world where she was going to be selling photos of herself online for attention, likes, and money. This scene almost shone a light on the fact that Cassie was once this innocent young girl with regular dreams and hopes, but here she was now resorting to this. With the attention that Cassie got and the fact that it was only her first rodeo and she was in quite an uncomfortable situation where she was doing substances and had Brandon acting all strange with her, I can imagine she's gonna get the likes and followers and maybe the money that she dreams of, but it's gonna come at a cost, and that cost is most likely gonna be her mental state, the safety that she has, and the lowering of her standards because all she cares about now is attention. There was a piece of dialogue that I'm holding on to, and that was when Cassie was told that it was strange that Maddie was repping her, so I'm intrigued to see if Maddie does have ulterior motives moving forward. Rue. Rue's story was actually really interesting in this episode. After entering her dark world and working with Alamo, and even though she said that she wanted to go legit, with the DEA pulling her over at the end of the previous episode, she was now faced with becoming a snitch, or she'd get a minimum of 20 years in jail. Plus another 20 more for every death that could be connected to the narcotics that she was distributing. This provided tense moments throughout the episode, such as when she was playing poker with Alamo and the crew, but it also provided moments for Rue to sit there and reflect on the world that she was in, and that she was now in a position where she was trapped. She couldn't flee because the DEA were on her tail, and if she slipped up with Alamo, she knew that she'd be killed because she was basically trying to rat him out. Rue did actually put her foot in it because with it being revealed that Angel had run away from the rehab clinic, something that I don't think is actually the case at all. I think Angel was most likely killed because Alamo feared that she'd open up her mouth and speak about the fact that her best friend was dead there. So I feel like after hearing that, Rue wanted to take some responsibility for Kitty, take her under her wing and make sure that she was okay. We saw a really dark scene of Kitty being in the center of the room with many of the men around her, and she was doing things that she didn't actually want to do. The scene was painfully harrowing, especially with Rue looking at it through the CCTV video footage, but when the light got switched on, and how's she doing, she making her money's worth was said, it kinda just brought to light how these people view the girls as objects, as moneymakers, and they don't actually care what happens to them. They're disposable in their eyes. Hence why Rue said to her in the bathroom if she was okay and if she was being forced to do something. It was a piece of dialogue that was heard by one of the girls and then caused an argument to occur because she needed to try and get out of the situation of being accused as untrustworthy. Rue was also in a difficult situation because with substances being found in the car and her also being spotted in Mexico with Uno, a member of the cartel. With the police wanting information on Lori, but Alamo killing Paladin in the previous episode, and Alamo and her cutting ties, Rue knew that she needed to find a way to get back in that supply chain. Lori and the group raided Alamo's and robbed the safe that we've seen having a large importance in the season, and with Faye being the driver, and Rue giving up her name. I think Rue knows that she's condemned her to death herself, and now Lori and her crew are going to be anticipating the wrath of Alamo in their response. I don't actually know if Lori would have given the green light for this attack because it does feel a bit brash and she did walk off after Paladin's funeral, so I guess we'll find out in the next episode. Rue being faced with the sinister reality of the world that she's in is something that really was at the forefront of her arc in this episode. The caring nature that she has and the tightrope that she's now walking on could be the death of her. She's gonna have to watch every step that she takes because if she falls, there'll be more than the blood of somebody else on her face. It'll be her own, or she'll end up behind bars for most of her life. Lexi and Jules. Now, Lexi is the character that I probably feel the most sorry for in the show. She's genuinely trying to make something of herself in the traditional sense by starting at the bottom and working her way up, and she's the only one not reaping any rewards whatsoever. In fact, she ended up in a worse position by the end of the episode. With the show that she's working on needing a painting in the background of her set, she requested Jules to come in and do it because obviously she's an artist, something that Jules stepped away from because she cares more about selling her time for money rather than doing what she's passionate about. However, in this instance, she did a painting that contained nudity when it was going to be in the background of the shot on a network TV program, something that she probably should have realized wouldn't have flown by. With that feedback being given, instead of rectifying it, she took offense to it, cost the network $191,000 because they had to delay the shoot for a week, and it all ultimately landed on Lexi's shoulders because she was the person that recommended Jules to do the painting. Personally, I found Jules' reaction over the top. Granted, maybe Lexi could have been clearer with the brief that she gave her, and that's something that Lexi will need to own. However, Jules clearly can't separate objective criticism from subjective. Lexi was actually shocked at what everybody was doing. For example, Jules is selling her time and giving up on her dream for an apartment. Rue was looking for substances. Cassie was selling her body and Maddie was overseeing it. She literally said, "Are you crazy?" Lexi's going down a completely different pathway to everybody, but it shows that even in the world that she's gone into, there's a price to your mistakes if you mess up like everybody else. I imagine Lexi might begin to distance herself from them because after what happened with Jules, she can't afford to be dragged into any other worlds or have the issues from theirs seeping into hers. Nate didn't actually have that large of an involvement in this episode, but with him, we saw that he was on the cusp of losing pretty much everything. Cassie left him, and with him feeling like his toe was symbolic of their relationship, the fact that he was able to save it and sew it back on, he thought that their marriage could be repaired, when in actual fact it doesn't seem like that at all now. With Naz breathing down the neck of him, and knowing full well that another beating is coming his way if he doesn't pay up, he went to the committee that had the power to approve or deny his project going ahead due to the endangered flower that was preventing it from being built. And even with the changes and planning on going around the flowers, the motion was denied. This sent Nate into a spiral and he was on the ground, on his knees, begging for it to be granted. This wasn't because of the project, this was because he knew that he'd die if he didn't get the project moving forward, and Naz off of his tail. And sadly, that's exactly what I think is going to happen. I think Nate is going to pretty much lose everything. He's lost Cassie, we're seeing him lose the project, and I think we could sadly see him lose his life because he's just not going to be able to pay back the people that he owes his debts to. We might also end up seeing him getting closer to Jules now that Cassie is out of the equation, or we could end up seeing Maddie and him getting closer too, especially seeing as though Maddie looked jealous during the wedding. Nate's story is one that I am intrigued by because it could genuinely go anywhere right now. My review of the episode. I thought this was a really good episode of the show. I thought episode 3 would be difficult to top because of the wedding and the drama that happened during the ending, but with everything that happened with Rue, Jules, Cassie and Maddie, it just carried it on in the most perfectly messed up way possible. I really like the theme of this season of the price that you pay to end up doing what you're doing. For example, Rue's morals have gone out the window, Jules has given up on her passion, and Cassie, well, she's just selling photos of herself now. Each character arc has value, and that's what I think is making the show feel so fluid when watching it. Whenever it cuts away from, say, Rue's story, we're instantly met with another story that's just as gripping and tense, and we don't know where it's going. I thought Rue and Alamo's story was a bit dramatic to begin with, but now, with her having risk and being an informant, it does make the stakes higher and we're beginning to see more drama, tension, and a deeper look inside of her mind as she's faced with the uncomfortable nature of the industry that she's working in. The parallels in many of the characters were quite captivating in this episode, and it brought to light the similarities. For example, Cassie and Kitty were one, and also Maddie and Jules. The scenes that would occur where we'd cut between were seamless, and it showed how they were only a few degrees of separation from each other when it came to their different worlds and the consequences. As funny as Cassie's story is, I do find her character a little bit two-dimensional. I get that's probably the point, but after a while, the dumb blonde act does get a bit repetitive and make her feel substanceless, so I'm hoping we'll see some different layers to the character as the season goes through its final 4 episodes. Many people have said that the soundtrack isn't quite landing as well in this season, and I'd probably agree with that. There haven't really been any real memorable moments in the score which have captivated the emotion, tone, or setting as well as the previous seasons, and I think that's a real shame, especially considering how strong it was before. Overall, I am really enjoying this season of the show. It's refreshing to have it back on our screens, and whilst this isn't set during high school anymore, seeing the dark worlds that the former students have found themselves in is entertaining to see them navigate. So, there you have it, Euphoria Season 3 Episode 4 Ending Explained.